All right. Hi guys, good morning. My name is Ram, and today we're going to be learning about Git. All right. So it's a very interesting topic to learn about, and I've covered it many times. A lot of times I have failed to cover it properly because of my internet issues, but that's okay because today we're going to do it in a very amazing way. So for all of those who've been waiting from last week, we're going to be doing it really well today. Okay. I've already got everything set up. Anyways, besides that, I want a few things from you guys. I want a confirmation check from you guys, whether you guys can see me properly, whether you guys can hear me properly, and whether you guys can see my presentation properly or not. All right. So once you guys give me a confirmation check for all of those things, I can begin this session properly. All right. Now, while you guys are giving me the confirmation check in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys something really cool. Now, a lot of you are already familiar with this because it's becoming a lot more popular these days. But it's something that I want to emphasize more and more. This is called Great Learning Academy. Okay, so this is an amazing place for you to go ahead and get yourself a certificate. Now, don't be repulsed by this. Oh no, he's selling us a certificate or not. Don't worry, this is completely free. This is a venture that we have started at Great Learning to help people out, really figure out what they want to do, and especially for those people who've lost their jobs or are not able to find their jobs during the pandemic that has been been plaguing us for so long, right? So this is a place where you can visit and start your career, right? So just come to this page, that is greatlearning.in/academy, select on a career path, and whichever career suits you best, I would recommend choose that. Or if not, just check out whatever is more suitable for you, because sometimes in life we don't know what we want. And I think this is a good place for you guys to go ahead and start and see what you want, because that's the only way you find out what you really want to do is to try everything out, right? So here, without having to pay anything, just try out all the different career paths there are. Now, what are these career paths? So let's say you want to check out data science. If you click on data science, you're going to find all the information you need to become a data science, right? And if you keep on scrolling down, you'll see all the different courses that are available for becoming a data science person. So these are all free courses, and these are all the recommended courses to start your journey towards becoming a data scientist. So we have data science foundations, Python fundamentals, and for each of these courses, you will receive a certificate. So there, you are getting certificates as well as you're getting a lot of knowledge. So go ahead and feel free to check these out. Now, this isn't true just for data science. If you want to do something else, that is also possible. All right. Now, if you guys don't want to go through a career path, and if you don't find something that you like, what you can do is you can just scroll down. Okay. So right. So let it load. Yes. So we used to have a previous system where you could just select individual courses, and you can still do that. That is not a problem at all. So you can just scroll down after all the career paths and select the course you want to work with. Okay. So there are a lot of courses, and the individual courses, you can just select them, or if you want, just search them over here, search domain or course name. So if you want to do Linux, you can just type in Linux. That's the example I always show. That's why it's coming here. And you'll see Linux in Hindi is a course available over here. So go ahead and search this and try out and see what you really like and pursue that career. Okay. All right. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and open the chat and see what you guys have to say. All right. So people are saying, yes, all is clear, but the video may be lagging. I assume you're talking about my webcam. Don't worry, guys, that's not that important. Webcam can lag, and yeah, it's okay if you don't see my face, lip sync to my voice. That's okay. I have a very beautiful voice, so you can just concentrate on the voice. Anyways, cool. So we have a good go ahead, right, today. So let me see who all are there. We have Ritesh, we have Pratiksha, we have Maven, we have Guru Prasad, and we have Shreya, and we have the Dream. So we have a lot of people today. We have 30 people right now. And guys, please go ahead and like this session. That really helps me out. And it really helps other people who want to check out these kind of sessions. Okay, because the YouTube algorithm and all, we need to beat it. So comment, like, share, all those kind of things, right? So with that out of the way, I want to begin this session. Now, I want to know from you guys whether you guys have watched any of my previous sessions on Git before or not, right? So if you have, let me know. Or if you are new to this concept, let me know what kind of background are you from, because that's something I want to incorporate into my discussion that I'm going to have with you guys. So this is a live session, and so I want you guys to be very interactive. Ask me questions. And if another person in the chat knows the answer and I'm not able to get the question in time, go ahead and answer that, right? Because this is a community I'm trying to form. This is the community that we should have, where people can easily talk to each other and not be ashamed to ask any questions, right? If you're confused, that's totally fine. Let me know and I will answer that question again and again for you. Okay. Obviously, we have some time limitations, so I will skip a few questions if there are a lot of questions. If there are not a lot of questions, then I will answer all of them. Cool. All right. With that disclaimer out of the way, what we're going to do is we're going to begin intro to Git. Okay. Cool. So what are we going to cover today? So in today's session, we're going to cover these things. So we're going to cover what is version control itself. And then we're going to cover why do we need a version control system. And then we're going to talk about what are the different version control systems available to us so that we can start using them. And then we're going to talk about Git, like Git overview as in why Git, what are the benefits of Git, and blah, 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 blah. And getting started with GitHub. What is GitHub? What is the differentiation between Git and GitHub? And how do we install Git and use it on our systems? And then Git basic commands. Okay, so these are the different things we're going to be covering today. If you have more time, I'm going to go into a little bit more advanced topics, but I don't think I'll have time because I want to explain everything properly to you. Cool. So let us begin with what is version control. Okay, so I want to know, or you guys also want to know, what is version control as a practice, right? So to understand this, let's take an example. We're going to be taking a coding example here itself. Let's imagine that you are a student still working in, studying in either a college or studying in school, right? And you have a final year project where you need to show a big piece of code that runs and does something. Let's say it's related to something called image processing. Okay, that's what your code does. It helps you to process image much more better. Right now, you are done with this project one day before your final review with your professor. Okay, but you think that whatever you've done so far will only get you an A+ grade. So you want to make changes to it so that you can get an even greater grade, like 100% grade, right? With your professor. And your professor does do that sometimes. So what do? You go ahead and make changes to your project, right? And let's take this example of a kid who does make these changes. So he brings out his, code sheet where he's written everything and he starts making those changes. And once he's done making those changes, let's say it takes him a whole night, right? And he tries to run it. So he has taken this thing and he's updated it with the new code that will make his project even better. But then 2-3 hours before the final review, he's actually done with the project, right? And now what happens is that his project is not running because all right. Sorry for that delay, guys. There was a power outage at my place and everything went off. I really don't like these kind of disruptions. I was going such a good flow and now it's all disturbed. Let's see what's the damage. I'm opening up the chat. Yep. Anyways, cool. So now, all right. So I want to continue now. Okay. So I was at the place where I was talking about this person not having a backup, and that really, screwing him up. So in future, he would want to have a backup of his files. Now that is a very good practice to have, even in any kind of project, right? It doesn't have to be coding itself, and you need to have multiple backups sometimes, right? So what does version control do over here? Let's take an example where the student, instead of having, working on the same piece of code, what he does is he creates another file in another folder, giving it all the correct metadata, like naming the folder that this is the version 1 of my project. And now I'm going to create something called version 2. Now his version 1 works perfectly fine. And he does the same thing one day before his review, and he creates the code and it does not work. But the thing is that he's not completely failed in his project because he has his version 1, right? And this time the professor is totally happy. I mean, he's not doing zero thing, right? Obviously, you never work one day before your project, right? That's a bit too much. But this is just to give you guys an example of how things can go bad if you don't have backups and if you're not version things properly. There are a lot more use cases in this, okay? So now let's get to the definition of what is version control. So these days, right, when we are developing software, we don't develop it with the mindset that there will only be that one piece of code that we ever, make. We'll always be iterating and remaking and adding more content to it. That's how the software in today's world works, be it in any particular industry, right? These days we make smaller snippets or smaller chunks of code and we deploy those codes regularly in different successions with a lot of feedback, right? And what this does is it creates different versions, because every time you add, you create a new version, right? So we have so many different versions of code at so many different times of, time. So this creates a need for organizing the code, right? And all of its different versions. This is where the practice of version control comes in. It is a practice of managing and storing different versions of a particular project. Now here I've written a version of a source code. That is definitely true. This is what we are trying to reach towards. But version control is just a practice of managing and storing different versions of a particular project. This is very, very true with large companies that have multiple projects and multiple teams working on them. If you can have like hundreds of versions with one team, imagine when you have 3, 4 or 100, 10 teams. Similarly, if you take the example of one big company having 3 teams, team A, team B, team C, right? And all of these different teams have their own projects. They're working on A1, A2, and etc. B1, B2, right? So each team has to make these particular versions for each project that they're working on. So they will produce so many different versions, and to manage it and to store it manually is such a tedious task, and we are 100% prone to error in this kind of situation. That's why we make use of version control tools. And to be honest, why do we use version control tools? Because of this reason that I just told you. It helps us to manage, it helps us to store all of our code, and it makes it so much easier to do a lot of things. And it meshes so well with the software development. Now, in software development, we try to automate all the processes as much as we can. And when you're making use of a version control system or a version control tool, it really makes the automation process a lot more easier than it would have been before. That's why we use version control system. Now, there are a lot of benefits to using version control systems. Like you have complete control over your whole, system, and whatever pushes you're doing, pulling you're doing, who's doing it, who has authorization for that you have control over. And there's a big amount of security because obviously our software is our dear property and we don't want anyone else to use it. That's why we have a good layer of security over almost all the good version control systems. And it gives us the option of fast delivery. Now, previously, if you wanted to transfer code, do you just take it and you put it in a USB and give it to your colleague? No, that's not how we're going to do it. We push it to a central repository that is on a cloud somewhere, and our colleague is just going to access that particular repository. We'll talk about what are those repositories and what is the cloud system, right? And availability. So there is one amazing thing about version control systems, that it gives you high availability. So if you're using, let's say, Git, right, you have the guarantee of having your code available to you at almost all times, bar any natural disasters or the world falling down, or a global crisis. Let's say the climate crisis is going to come in the future, but we don't have to worry about it. So it gives you high availability, so you can access your code from anywhere at any time. Granted, you have two things: you have authorization to that particular code, and second, that you have internet access. Why internet access? Because most of the code that we store these days is done so in a remote server somewhere, right? So if you're using Git, right, we want to store our code in one place so everyone can access it from that one local repository. Okay, now I hope that is clear why we use a version control system. What are the different version control systems available to us? So here are the different version control systems available to us. I'm only going to give you guys some popular examples. Like you have AWS code commit, you have Git, and you have Mercurial, and you have all others, SVN and all that. And you have two different types of version control system. You have a distributed version control systems, and you have centralized version control systems. Okay, you don't have to concentrate on this that much. You will get to learn it as you go. Most of you are only going to be using Git, and that's why I'm teaching Git today. Okay, cool. So now we can begin with the Git overview. So by now you would have deduced what the job of Git is. It's a version control system. It helps us to manage, and it helps us to store our code so that we don't have to do it. And that's why Git is such an awesome tool, right? So the full form of Git is Global Information Tracker. It's an open source tool, so you can use it commercially without having to pay for anything. And it's a distributed version control system. That means that all of your code is in one particular repository on a remote server that you can access anytime you want via the internet. And you can even call it a source code management system. There are a lot of names for it. You can just call it Git itself. Now, why was Git developed and when was it developed? So it was developed back in 2005 by this awesome person called Linus Torvalds. Like, he didn't do it alone, obviously, but he was a major guy in that. Linus has made a lot of cool things in his life, and Linux was one of them. So if you guys know about Linux, he's made that also, and he's made Git also. Now, why did he make Git? He made Git because at the time in 2005, there were no good free options for a version control system. They had good paid ones, but then he wanted one that was really good, really good, and it was free. So he made Git, and he made it open source because he has the philosophy of giving software for free, and which is really good. I agree with him. And because of that, it became really popular, and a lot of people started using it, and now it's an industry standard. Everyone uses it, right? So how does Git work? So there are two parts to Git. I'm going to explain to you guys in simple. There is Git and there is GitHub. So imagine GitHub as the remote server where you're storing all of these things, right? And Git is the tool that you download on your own system. So let's say there are two developers working on something called Project A, right? And Project A is to be situated on GitHub. Now, developer 1 has a dependency. Developer 2 has a dependency on developer 1, which means that once the developer 1 writes his code, only then can developer 2 write his code, right? So here, the developer 1 installs Git on his system. He starts working on the code, and when he's done with the code, he pushes the code from his own system onto GitHub, which is on a remote repository, which is not on his system. So basically, it is on the internet, right? Or if you guys know cloud, then it's on a cloud. Okay. Now, once developer 1 is done with his code, now the developer 2 can start working with his code. So what he does is he looks at GitHub and he's like, oh, so the new code has been pushed. So let me pull it onto my own system. So he takes whatever changes developer 1 has done and he pulls them on his own system, and then he starts working on that. And once he's done working on that, he pushes it back onto GitHub. So now we have two versions. One that developer 1 made and the second one that the developer 2 made. So on GitHub, on our repository, we have two versions of Project A version 1 and Project A version 2, right? So this way we are managing our code and we are storing it in a very well organized manner. When we look at GitHub, you will see all the different options that are available to us. All right. So this is the thing that happens. Now remember, Git and GitHub are slightly different from each other. Git is the tool that you install on your system and it helps you to do all the different things. And GitHub is the place where you're doing the major managing and storing aspect of different things. All right. I hope that's clear with you guys. If you talk about Git features, it's very compatible with other tools also. So if you want to use Git and someone else's repository, you can do that also, like some other tools. Like if you want to use Mercurial's repository, which is Bitbucket, then you can do that also. It's highly collaborative. The whole purpose of having Git is to make sure that you can work with your colleagues without having any issues, right? So it's very collaborative tool. And speed is always of the essence when we're developing software. So it is very speedy and it replicates repositories like this. And it's a distributed system and it's highly reliable and it's highly secure. It's very robust and it's very secure. Okay, so these are the features of Git. Now, before I move on to anything else, I want to know from you guys whether everything is clear for you or not. Okay, only then I want to proceed, because a lot of you might get confused. Because now we're going to go to the next part and I'm going to start the installation process and then we're going to do the basic commands. Okay. So let me know in the chat. I'm going to wait for like 2-3 minutes and see if you guys have any questions. So, okay. So SMP editors. So I am learning Python. Is this better because I'm just in school going boy? So I can change my language to Java? I'm not exactly sure of your question, but what I would suggest is Python is a very good language to start off for beginners. It's pretty good. And if you're going to school, right, you generally get the option of Python and C++ if you're in CBSE. I'm not sure about any other course syllabus. So I think Java is also there in ICSC. I would recommend Python to start off, but if you're learning 2 languages at the same time, it's not a problem. You generally can differentiate between them both. So Kashyap is saying GitHub is a remote repository. Well, first I would like to say good to see you again, Kashyap. It's always nice to see you. It always makes me feel like, yeah, my session is doing well if Kashyap is on the stream. And he's saying GitHub is a remote repository. Yes. So GitHub is the place which is on some remote server somewhere, right? Okay. So we have Rishi saying it's clear for him. Great. He's excited to learn all the commands. Awesome. And Shreya saying it's clear, understandable. Guru is saying clear. Okay. So we have one question. So we have Ananya asking, what do you mean by, I think distributed, what is centralized then? Okay, so this is a common question. Now, let me just bring up the exact meaning. All right, cool. All right, cool. So you guys need to know that there is only one, there is our main difference. There are other differences also, but I'm going to tell you guys the main difference. So on a distributed version control system, let's say if it's for project A, then there is a history of changes that are being made, right? The history of developer 1 adding the code and the history of developer 2 pulling the code and making his own changes and pushing it. So that history, right, it is there with everyone. They can have it on their system. Whereas in a centralized repository, that is not possible, where it is only stored in the central server where everyone is communicating to and from. Okay, so that is the main difference, right? But most of these days, distributed version control systems are used. Now, what is history over here? To understand that, we need to go a little bit more deeper and understand all the different things. All right, so I'm going to take a clear from everyone else that they've understood it. Now we're going to go ahead and learn about GitHub. Okay, so there is something called lifecycle of a code within Git. I will explain that. But before that, I want to tell you guys how you can install Git and how you can create an account on GitHub. So first, I'm going to write over here GitHub. And to download Git, you guys just need to type in download Git. Okay, just type download Git anywhere. And the first link you get, be very careful. You should not click on any unsolicited links. So just click on gitscm.com. Click on downloads over there, Git, the first link itself. And if you get different options, you can download Git anywhere, Linux, Mac, Windows, anywhere. Okay, it's very easy to do it on Linux. If you're on Linux, just type in apt update, and if you're using the Debian package manager, apt update and apt apt install Git. It's as easy as that. I don't even need to go into detail explain that. For Windows, you just need to click on Windows, download for Windows. Now, I'm not going to be doing it for you guys right now and showing you how to do it because it will mess up my own config. So I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to tell you, just download it, and it's very simple. You don't have to make any changes. It will show you a lot of changes that you can make, but just leave them as default. You don't need to do anything. All right. So just download it, and once it's installed, I'll tell you how it would look like. So once you download a Git, I can show you guys GitHub. It's going to open my own account, but if you guys don't have your own account, I'll show you how it would look like. Yeah, so this is my account. It's opened this up. Let me just show you how the main page looks like. All right, while this is loading, I see there is a question. Moni is asking, hi, I have just completed my MSc CS. Any job opportunities available, and learn my interest in Python and AI. All right. So Moni, you have an interesting background. You have done masters in computer science, so that is great. You have a lot of job opportunities, dude. You can go ahead and do anything you want. You can be a software developer, you can be a data scientist, whatever you're more interested in. So I see that you're interested in Python and AI. I would definitely highly recommend checking out a great learning career path on that, because we have a career path on artificial intelligence also, AI engineer. You can go ahead and check it out, and there are a lot of courses on this that will help you start your career on this. Okay. All right, coming back, GitHub. So this is what you guys will see. Just click on sign up for GitHub, and it's very simple. I don't even want to explain this to you guys because it's a very simple sign up process. Just give your email address and blah blah blah. Pass the you're not a robot and everything. So once you do that, you'll have something like this. You won't have all of these repositories and all these people, forking your repositories. I know I'm pretty cool. A lot of people fork my repositories. Anyways, so you won't have all of this. This is kind of empty for you. What you guys need to concentrate is on this particular thing. Click on new. This will help you create new repositories. Now, what is a repository? To explain what is a repository, just understand a repository is like a folder. It's a destination where you're storing similar files that are relevant to a particular project. So in project A, we knew that there were 2 versions to a code, right? So where were they stored? They were stored on GitHub, but where on GitHub? They were stored in a specific repository. It's called a code repository. So on a project A's code repository, we will store all the different code files that are relevant to project A. Right? So if I click on new over here, we are going to go ahead and create a new repository for ourselves. We're going to call it project A. Okay. So as you guys can see over here, all right. So I'll switch my networks. Hopefully there is no lag now. Okay. So this is a GUI. Now there is a question also. Okay. So Durgesh is asking, is the source code not public once you push it on GitHub? So you choose about that. So once you push the code onto GitHub, you can make it public or you can make it, private. It's your choice. So am I audible now, guys? Because that is very important. All right. So this is Git GUI. This is GUI is basically graphical user interface, and bash is the terminal, right? Okay. So GUI, you can create a new repository, clone an existing repository, open an existing repository from here. But nah, that's a little bit too lame. So I'm just going to click on quit, and we're going to use bash. So it makes us look like a hacker. Okay. Now over here, I'm going to describe what we are seeing. So this is basically my machine name. This is a compiler. And this is the name of my directory that I'm using. So I'm on desktop and I'm on project A. Okay, cool. So project A is my folder. Now, what is the process over here? How do we push our code from our system onto GitHub? To do that, there is something called a life cycle of the code, right? So the first thing you need to do is you need to assign a working directory. So this is something you do inside of your mind. This is not you do something with the help of Git. You think of a folder name, you create that folder, which is something that I've done over here already. As you guys can see, this is the folder I've created. And once you create that folder, you assign it as a working directory. You are going to be working over here. So once you've done that, you have done the first step, assign the working directory. The next step is to initialize. Initialize is basically telling Git, listen Git, I have assigned a working directory by myself. Now I want you to understand this is where I'm going to work. And I want you to initialize this particular folder or directory as a local Git repository. So it's going to be my repository on my system. It's different than my repository on GitHub because that's online. That's not on my system. But this one, project A, is going to be my local repository, which is available on my system. Okay, so for that, we need to give Git a command because Git cannot magically understand this. It cannot read our minds, not yet. Okay, so git init is the command for that. So git initialize, and I'm going to press enter, and you guys are going to see a message coming up. Initialize empty Git repository in C, blah, blah, blah. And we have initialized Git. Now Git understands that project A is a working directory and that I'm going to be creating code within it. And you can even see something here called master. This is called a master branch. We're going to go, we're not going to understand master branches here because there's going to be a lot more something I need to explain to you guys in detail, but don't worry about that. There is a whole tutorial I've done on Git where I go into detail on every single thing. So the moderator will leave that link in the chat and you guys can watch it. Okay, so in project A, right, now that I've initialized it, what is the next step? So the next step is staging. But before staging, we need to create our code. So I'm going to use a command called nano and I'm going to write index.html. Nano is the name of an editor and index.html is the name of the file that I'm creating. So I'm just going to press enter over here. And you guys are going to see that it will open up an editor where I can start writing code. So I'm just going to write here some very simple code. So this is going to be a static website. You guys will not be able to view it, but it's okay. I'm going to save it by pressing Control O, pressing enter. Control O is asking what is the name you want for this file. I want it to be index.html, but I'm going to press enter. So it says wrote 4 lines and I'm going to press Control X to exit out of here. Okay. And I'm going to check if my file is there or not using the ls command, that is the listing command. So index.html is here, which is great. Now I can go to the next step, that is staging. So what is staging? Staging is the process in which you tell Git that I have made all the changes I want, or I have created all the files I want. Now Git, I want you to track all of those changes that I've made. So if I write git add index.html, I'm telling Git, please stage index.html file. Okay, so it's going to look at all the changes that I've made and it's going to track all of those changes. So I'm going to press enter. All right. And now index.html is a file that is being tracked by Git. Okay, so Git understands that this is the file that I want to push onto my online repository or my remote repository. The next step is to commit the changes that are made. So once Git knows that this is the file that I want to push, it will also needs to know whether these are the final changes or not. So to make sure that these changes are saved, right now the changes that I've created a file, I'm going to use a command called git commit. So git commit is a command that helps me to commit all the changes. So git commit -m, m is to write a message. It's always important to write a very relevant message to what you've done. So we created an index.html, right? So we'll write created index.html as our message. So this is something to help us remember what we did, and no need to write the date and all because it already registered that automatically. I'm going to press enter and you guys are going to see master created index.html. That's the message. One file changed 4 insertions. So it either is a deletion or an insertion. So we have made the changes and our file is now committed. We have one file and it's committed. Now, to make sure you have done all the changes you want, you can do a git status. It will let you know if there is anything remaining to commit or not. If there is nothing to commit, you can go ahead and push this onto your remote repository, which is this. Okay. Now, to push it onto our remote repository, we need for our local Git to know where to push this particular file to. For that to happen, we need to go ahead and add, this is the last step, which is adding to GitHub. So we need to do git remote add origin. Okay, so let me explain this command. So we are git model, yeah. So we are adding the remote origin for our local repository. So we are basically connecting our online repository to our local repository using this command. Now we need to mention the URL also. So I'm just going to copy the URL and I'm going to paste it over here. Okay, now I'm going to press enter. And we will see that the Git has added this as my origin file. Okay, now that this is added its origin file, we need to push our code. So there is a command for that, git push origin master. So what we are doing here is we are pushing, sorry, not origin, it's origin and master. So what we're doing here is we are basically telling Git to please push all the files on my master branch onto origin. Okay, so what are all our files? It is just index.html. And what is our origin? This is our origin. Okay, so we are pushing all the files from our local master branch onto origin. So if I press enter over here, it should either ask me for login credentials or it will push it directly. Because I don't remember if I configured my login credentials. We are waiting for a response. All right, so yes, I did put all my login credentials. Okay, cool. So we have successfully pushed all our code from the master, which is nano-index.html, onto our remote repository. Now we just have to, refresh, and you guys will see the magic happen. Just wait for it. Till then, let me see if there are any things you guys have asked. Pulkesh is asking, sir, is there any difference if you're using GUI or CUI? CUI. Oh, it's loaded. So you guys can see over here that Remy code created index.html. That is our first commit. And it was made 3 minutes ago. This is a commit ID. And this is the file. So if I click on index.html, you guys can see the code. Yep, you guys can see the code. Ram's great website. Welcome to this awesome website. All right, cool. So let me come back. All right. And you guys can see that there is one master branch. You can have multiple branches. I'll explain that concept if we have enough time today. So as you guys can see, I have added my index.html over here and was done 4 minutes ago. So we are successfully basically pushed our code from our local system onto our remote system. So let's say that we want to make a change now and we want to make that change and upload that change. So now I'm going to repeat the part of the cycle. I'm going to start from this point. Okay, so we only need to initialize once and we need to assign the working directory only once. We can stage and commit and push multiple times. So over here, we were creating or making the changes. So let me come back and let me open up my index.html again. And over here, I'm going to add more things. All right, so this is the change I made. I'm going to just go ahead and save it. Control O to save it, index.html. That's the name I want, and Control X to exit. Okay, cool. So now we will repeat our stages. I'm going to stage the file. So this time I'm going to show you something else. Git add dot. So it will stage all the files in my directory. Since there is only one file, it's only going to stage that file. So you can either do git add dot, or you can just specify which file you want. Okay. Now that I've staged it, I'm just going to do a git status to show you guys that we modified index.html. So we need to make sure that this change that we did, that we modified, is committed or not. So I'm going to do a git commit over here, -m, and over here I'm going to write a message, added p tag to index.html, and I'm going to press enter. So we made 2 insertions, and I'm going to do a git status again. Nothing to commit, so we can push all the file onto our remote branch. I just need to do a git push origin master. Okay, so you're pushing to the origin from the master. All right, so we have pushed our file to our origin. So if I refresh over here, you guys will see the magic happen again. All right, so you guys can see that we have our new index.html file. There are 2 commits made to it, and you can see the latest commit being shown over here. Added p tag to index.html. Okay. And if you go on, click on index.html, you guys can see the changes that I made. Okay. So these are the changes that we made. Cool. So this is your basic working with Git. Okay. So these are the basic commands that you're working with Git. I'm just going to show you a few other things. Like if you want, you can go ahead and edit your code from here itself. Like as you can see, this is my 6 lines, and I can go ahead and edit this file from here itself, or you can trash this file from here itself. See, and once I add any changes that I want to over here, I can preview my changes, commit the changes over here. Okay, click on cancel so you can go back. We can do it on GitHub itself also, and we can do it from local repository also. And a lot of times you guys will not be using bash terminal separately over here. This is something you ad hoc. If you are working in software development, you would be using Visual Studio Code or some kind of integrated development environment. So your Git, right, it will be integrated within your integrated development environment. Yeah, I know that sounds confusing. Basically, if you have Visual Studio Code or you're using Sublime, whatever editor you're using for coding, you'll have Git integrated within that. So you can just bring that up and push that code from there itself, right? And if you are not a software developer and you don't aim to go into that kind of field, then you make use of this. Yeah. All right. So over here, there are more things. Now we can go to the history of our commits. You guys can see both our commits over here, right? So if I just click on added p tag to index.html, it should change. It should show us what are the changes we made. So there are 2 changes that we made. We made this change and we made this change, right? We can add a comment to this commit. Like if you're a senior developer and you want to make sure there are no errors, or if you want to comment or something, you can go ahead and do that. Because generally when you're working in a company, right, what happens is you'll have one main branch over here and you'll have multiple developers working to push code onto this branch. So they can't directly do it. They need permission from the senior developers. So it's called a pull request, because it's a request. They can't just do it. And in that case, once their PR has been reviewed by the senior developer pull request, then we'll go ahead and get merged. Okay, so what are branches? So I've explained to you guys this thing. Now I want to explain a little bit more of an advanced this thing. That is branches. So when you're working in software development, right, you want to make sure that multiple people can work on the same piece of code at different times. right? So that's where we have branches. So if I do a git branch over here command, you guys can see that there is something only master over here, because that's what the only branch we have over here. So let's say that you wanted to add a certain feature onto your master branch. Now, master branch is basically your main branch. All right. And when you want to add certain things to it, instead of directly making the changes, you make a change in another branch and you merge it onto this. So let's say that we create another branch. I'm going to call it git branch, and I'm going to, this is the command for it, git branch, and I'm going to call this feature A. So I've created my branch. Now if I do a git branch over here, you guys can see that I've created feature A, another branch, and we are going to move to this branch. Right now, let me show you. If you do ls, there is index.html, but if we move to feature A, they will not, So whenever you create a branch, right, it will copy all the files that are there in the current branch. So let me go ahead and create another file over here. Right. So I created feature A when I was in master, and in master we already had index. So it copies the index onto feature A, but it will not copy hello.txt because you're still on master. Right. Now, if I move to feature A branch and do an ls, how did that happen? It's because we did not commit our changes. Yes, it's because we made a file, but if I do a git status, we did not commit this and it is not even tracked. So I'll just track this. I will track this. I will say added hello.txt to master branch. All right. Now, when I do a git checkout is the command we use to change our branches, feature A, and I do an ls, you guys can see that hello.txt is not over here. All right. Cool. So whenever you're changing branches, make sure that any changes that you made in the current branch are saved and committed, and only then you should go to other branches. Okay. So what is the thing that is going on here? We have two branches. What is this branch or funda? So to explain this better, imagine in project A, you want to add more things and you want two developers to do it simultaneously. So if they had to do it with only one branch, then you will have conflicts because two people are working on the same branches, and when they push it together, right, there'll be a lot of things that they've changed. So that's why we make use of the concept of branching, where each person works on a particular branch. So I am working on feature A as a developer A, or developer 1 is working on feature A branch, and developer 2 is working on feature B branch. So let's say that we create another branch over here. Let's call it feature B. All right. And let's say that we are developer 1 now, and developer 1 starts working on his code. So he creates a file called security patch dot js. Okay. So he security patch dot js, right? So he needs to save his file, stage his file, and then save the changes he made. All right, so he's done with all of his changes. Now, once he's done with all of his changes, he wants to make sure that these changes are reflected on his master branch. So if I do a git branch over here, you guys can see that we have 3 branches and we are on feature A. Now I will move on to master branch. And over here, I want to merge my feature A changes to my master. So there is a command for that. So I'm just going to do git merge, and I'm going to mention the branch name. All right. So this is just a commit message. Whenever you merge branches, you create a commit also. So over here, I'm going to write shift colon and WQ. So WQ is to write and quit. Okay, so it will create the merge, it will create the, all right, cool. So if we do an ls, we can see that the security patch.js is here now. So we have merged the changes from our feature A onto our master, right? And let's say that now the developer 2 starts working. So he will move to feature B, and from within feature B, he'll create his own file. So let's say, and also let me just ls and show it to you that he does not have any of the other changes, right? So let me just show you. He'll go ahead and create his own file. Let's say function B. So he's created function B, and he's going to add function B .js, and he's going to commit that. All right, now he's going to his master branch, and now he's going to merge the changes. Okay, so we'll do a git merge feature B. All right, so this is the commit message. We'll leave it merging just branch feature B. If you want, you can add more stuff. All right, cool. So now our master branch is up to date and it has all the different functions. Cool. So this is how we work with it, guys. All right. Okay, I hope the branching concept didn't confuse you that much. If you guys still have questions, leave them in the chat. I just want to show you some other cool commands that you need to use. One command is called git log. It gives you a log of all the commits you've made so far. I should have showed you this before I went to branching, but let's say that you've made 2-3 commits on your master branch, right? And you want to see those changes. So you just type in git commit and this is what you will see. Well, not exactly this. You'll just see what are commits you've made and what is the commit message. So over here, you guys can see there are 4 commits, right? This is feature A commit, commit for merging branch, and commit for add function, and then merge. And you guys can see that some of the branches are on different commits. So what is happening over here is that we can tell that some branches are behind. So master branch is completely up to date because it has contents of feature B as well as contents of feature A. Whereas feature A will not have contents of feature B, or feature B will not have contents of feature A. So they will not have the same commits, right? So this is how it works. Let me make it better for you guys. Just Control C. One second. It's Control C to exit. All right, so let me show you a different project because that'll be easier. Let me quickly create this. Sorry. Let me create a temporary folder. We'll go inside the temporary folder. And once we're inside the temporary folder, what we're going to do is we are going to initialize it. So we're doing a completely different project because I want to show you how to use the git log command. Okay. Then I'm going to create a file called hello.txt. I'm going to stage this file. I'm going to commit it. So this is a completely different project that we are doing. This is for me to show you how the git log command works. So now that we do git log, right, you can see that there's only one commit over here. And it is pointing to the master because master is up to date. Okay. Now, what can we do is we can add another commit over here. For that, we'll make a change in hello.txt. We'll just add some content. Hello. And we'll stage it again. We'll commit it again. So we have made 2 commits now. And if I do a git log, you guys can see the 2 commits that have been made so far. All right. So commit 1 and commit 2. All right. So this is how your git log command works. Now let me go back to our project A file, and we're just going to push all the final changes. So I'm just going to do a git push origin and master. So this will push all the contents in master branch onto our repository, not the other branches. And I will go ahead and after showing this, I'll just show you guys the git clone command. And once I show you guys the git clone command, we can end the session. So let me just refresh over here. Okay, Ashish Gupta is saying, can you please show the diagram slide? Ashish, you can go ahead and check out learning material. You will see the whole slide there. Okay, so here you guys can see that all our files are over here. And if you click on master, you can see that it's not been updated with other branches because we don't push them. So you guys can see all the new functions that were added with all the commits. Okay, what we can do now is git push origin feature A. You can do the same with feature B also. And if you want to push only certain branches, then you can do that also. All right, so if I just refresh this. All right, so you guys get the point. Right? Now I want to show you the git clone command. So let's say that you are working on a completely different system. Now you want to use someone else's code. How do you go ahead and do that? So let's say, let's take an example that you are working on project B. Yeah, project B is a totally different project, and you go to project B. Right, and here you want to use parts of project A, or you want to use some parts of project A. So what you do is you use a command called git clone. So git clone is a command you guys will be using a lot. And what you do is whenever you go to a particular repository, right, you just click on the code and you copy the code address, okay, instead of downloading it, and you come back and you paste it and you wait to see the magic happen. So it's cloning project A onto this particular folder. So if I was in some other laptop and I wanted to get the parts of this particular file or project, then all I had to do was type in git clone and the name of the project. And if I do an ls, you guys can see project A is here. And if I just go into project A, I can see all the contents of project A are now here. So this is basically me downloading the folder of my project A folder. Okay, now this is a homework for you guys. Go ahead and download Git and try and clone my repository. Okay, once I want to see how you guys can clone my repository, like how I've done it over here. Just type in git clone and my URL, and just copy the code, URL, paste it, copy it, make any changes you want, and then push it onto your own repositories, or try to push it to my repository. Let's see what happens. Okay, I'll most probably have to give you permission to do that. Okay, so this is basically working with Git. Okay, and I've told you most of the common commands that you'll need to start working with it. If you guys have any other doubts, go ahead and check out the Git documentation, which is a very good place. And again, don't forget to check out my Git tutorial. There is a proper video that I've made on this. I don't go into, it's not a live session, so I go into details only, and you guys can watch that and learn. It's both in Hindi and in English. Okay, cool. So that's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this session, and I will see you guys in the next session. My name is Ram, and I'll see you guys in my next session. Okay, bye.